All right, Fungal Banner fans, we are back with our next guest and can't believe how fired up we are to have him on. Probably from one of the most scenic areas that we've had as a coach from, but head coach from Coeur d'Alene High School, Erik Karns, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And like I said, we were just talking off air. I love Coeur d'Alene. It's one of my favorite, most beautiful areas. And I can only imagine playing baseball with that backdrop. It's got to be gorgeous.
Beautiful in the summer, little iffy right now in the winter.
Yep. Dealing with all the stuff we are. Our first hard-hitting question right away to all our guests is, what is your favorite fungo?
Funny question, because about 7 years ago, I ordered some uniforms for a Little League team. They didn't come in. The guy forgot to put the order in. Anyways, he sent me 3 Louisville Slugger. They're like poplar. I think they're called the Fly Lights. I've had them for 7 years. I tape them up before and after. Probably the cheapest fungo on the market. But I just love swinging those things, and they're still around. Absolutely. After 3 years of banging balls around. So, yeah, good little product.
That's the most impressive part.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or for me, it's not letting my pitching coach use them. That's how they stick around.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, talk to us your path through baseball and what got you into coaching and led you to where you're at Coeur d'Alene.
Sure, absolutely. I started playing baseball at about 7 or 8 years old. I grew up in McMinnville, Oregon, down in the valley. Had a friend. I at the time, we lived out in the kind of on the outskirts of town, out in the country a little bit. I had a friend whose dad was coaching a Little League team. I don't come from an athletic family. Kid invited me, and I showed up. First day, didn't have a glove. I don't even know. I was playing first base or something like that. Caught a ball right in the eye. Got a big old shiner. Never touched a glove or a baseball in my life, and honestly, I loved it. Loved every minute of it. Playing Little League down there. Played through high school. Played with Ross Peterson. He was my coach, my head coach. Kind of a legend in the Valley. I think he went to Beaverton after we graduated. Won a couple state titles at Beaverton High School. Had Mike Cahill was a coach, and then Don Rutschman, Adley's I guess uncle. He kind of came in. He came in from Glencoe, I think. So, anyways, played high school through there. We were in the old Metro League. We were kind of the farm country bumpkins that played all those big schools in the Portland Metro League, and we did pretty well. Played all summer. At the time in Oregon, the Legion program was pretty big, and so my summers were filled with baseball and working, and just loved it. Got an opportunity to play at Whitworth. At the time, it was Whitworth College. They're in AIA up here in Washington, in Spokane. Came up, played it, and about my sophomore year, I was really getting into school and had some opportunities to do some research with some professors. It's kind of always been I've always loved sports, especially loved baseball, but I've also loved science. I'm a science teacher now. Had some opportunities, and that's when I decided to hang it up. So played there, and then got a teaching job down in California, lived down there for about 5 years, and then had children and decided to come back up here. My in-laws lived up in Coeur d'Alene, and so that's how we ended up here. Been coaching, as my kids were growing up from Little League, from the time they were in T-ball, so 4th grade or 4 years old, 5 years old. Been coaching them all the way through. Been coaching the high school now for 8 years. I've been the head coach here for 5 years now. So started in that weird COVID year. We actually got a couple games in that spring, and then ever since then been running the program up here.
Man, you're one of the lucky ones that spring to get some games in.
It was weird. We were playing down in the Tri-Cities, and it was the day when they shut down. We left at I want to say about 7:30 to get down there for the game on a Friday. And the coach came up and said, "Hey, we just got word that this is the only game being played in the entire state of Washington. It's all been shut down because of COVID." So we got to play 2 games, and that was our season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah. Well, and I always like the aspect of getting out and from being from Washington, I've never really left from coaching, but how other states run their high school baseball.
Sure.
We've always been stuck to our 20 games, and you don't get any other there's no outside coaching. There's nothing you can do other than the 3 months and then through the summer. But talk to us about high school baseball in Idaho, season length, how you guys can do things.
Sure.
Out of season.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to my friends that coach over in Spokane. their rules are so different than ours, and we're 20 miles away, just a border. And then I know in Oregon, it's different than Washington, different than Idaho. So it's kind of interesting how we all do things around here. But we have in Idaho, essentially at the end of the summer, so July 31st, there's about a week of a dead period and no contact period before the fall sports season starts up. After that, we can contact kids and have, hold what we call open practices, basically open to anybody that wants to come that goes to your school. There's no commitment to it. So, show up if you want to get some work in. If you don't want to get some work in, all I'm doing is just supervising, can't coach them. But we do have a kind of a odd rule that they call the rule of two here in Idaho. So if I have two kids, it's not considered an open practice. I can coach them at any time other than those dead periods. Mm-hmm. So the way that kind of plays out, like right now, we pretty much run open gyms or open facilities 5 days a week through the entire off season, basically from the start of school in September all the way up to tryouts, which are in February. And again, I'll be in there. My coaches will be in there. My coaching staff will be in there. And all we can do is just supervise, and really it comes down to the seniors and the older upperclassmen, and those kids kind of take the reins, and run the practices and coach up the young kids. And so that's something that we really focus on, is getting those kids, those juniors and seniors, in that leadership position, where they're able to be comfortable talking to the freshmen, sophomores, maybe some new kids that have moved in, and kind of coaching them up. So try to, as much as possible, depending upon the group that you have, those guys run it and do a pretty good job of maintaining the culture and maintaining the expectations about, how we run things here at Coeur d'Alene High School. So that runs, until February 23rd. February 23rd this year, 2 days of tryouts. And then I think our first game is March 9th. We're going to go over to Yakima. We've a doubleheader against Seattle Prep and Gonzaga Prep. We get those 2 games, and then we've got 18 league games. The rule is you can play up to 22 games or 20 games plus a tournament. So we always go down to Boise, play some of the big Boise schools right at the start of spring break. We get those 4 games in. So 24 games schedule, and then playoffs, typically 2 to 3 games in playoffs. You make the state tournament, you can add more. So it could be up to, somewhere in the order of 30, 32 games, by the end of the season with the kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine having that time and to be able to have your players to run those things. I mean, your leadership is set come first day of practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just count on those guys to show up, and you guys know how teenagers are. It's some days they're there, some days, most of the time they're there. Some days they're there physically, not mentally, but it's just great. I mean, the one thing that I love about that rule, or allowing us to hold these open practices, is kids of all creed and color and financial situations. They can come in. I've got kids that come in and they're wearing the same clothes they've worn all week, and it gives them a chance. Do they make a team in the spring? I don't know, but it gives them a chance to be involved, with a group of other boys. And I think that's really, really important. So it's a great way for a lot of kids to stay involved in baseball over the entire winter if they're not, participating in a winter sport.
Well, it's keeping high school kids in a good spot.
Absolutely.
We know where they're going after school is the best part. And that's why I wish Washington would open it up, because we could reach so many more kids and keep them so much busier.
Yeah. Yeah. And how baseball's gone. It's gone like every other sport. When you don't allow this, you're basically giving the kids that already have advantages in life, financial advantages in life, parental advantages in life, you're giving them a chance to go out and find that, that travel coach or that pitching coach or that hitting coach. And those guys can afford it. And we, up here, at least, that might be a quarter of the families, and for our kids, it's just great. They just come in 5 days a week, a lot of them, and just get their work in, and it's wonderful. So in addition to that, we did 2 years ago, they did allow us to have 10 hours of contact with as large a group as possible. So in the preseason. So we use that. We were talking a little bit about, talking about arm care and that sort of thing. So we're going to use that. And we've used that. By that time, our pitchers are pretty much ready to roll. And so we throw live pins And there might be 15, 20 guys in there at a time taking hacks off our pitchers. We get 10 hours. So I just keep a spreadsheet and, this date we did an hour of live pins, live hits. And so really it's pretty nice that they allow that as well. Because, as it is, our bullpens up to that point have been with 2 kids thrown into a 9 pocket. Right. And that's all you can do. And so you get those guys in for 15, 20-minute pin. And then the next group of 2 show up and they can't be in the same facility at the same time. So it gets for really long nights when we get to, basically beginning of February, end of January, and we're starting to throw pins. And then we can really open it up at the end and get some live ABs and kind of see where the kids have grown over the year.
Yeah, just on the arm care side, it sounds like you have a pretty good build-up and feel for getting your guys to where they want to be. But maybe talk about that process before you start pens when you're doing that open gym period. Are you using your 2-to-1 periods to lay the groundwork for that throwing program, maybe individually for a kid of how this is going to work, but maybe talk about how you use maybe your other times to develop structure for the open gym time. So, I mean, obviously seniors know what's supposed to be done, but how do you kind of get your point across to where what's being done during that period is productive for them to build up for a season?
Absolutely. So, essentially what we do in the fall, if my kids are playing, I want them out throwing still so that they're not just doing they're not just playing on the weekends on a Sunday, throwing 100 pitches on a Sunday game. So those kids are throwing in the fall, just in a typical, late summer, type of throwing program, a little bit of long toss, and then they're throwing pins to a catcher, but we're not, talking to them. They're just maintaining the feel. I like to give time off. For a lot of kids that aren't playing multiple sports, especially some of our pitchers, the young guys, I mean, it's just crazy. Some of these young guys have thrown 100 innings over the spring/summer. They just get abused to the nth degree. Now, not all coaching, like the travel ball staffs, are that bad, but some of these young guys that just don't have full grown bodies yet. So we give time off. We just started, boys just started, playing catch, essentially just started the throwing program. We've got it kind of structured where the kids know that, this week we're going to go out to 30 yards and play catch for, whatever, 10 minutes, whatever it might be. And so we, the boys kind of know the progression in terms of building up. For me, a big part of that is accountability. So I can't, obviously I can't instruct, but I can see who's there and who's putting in the time and is ready to throw. Off a mound when we get there in late January. So by that time, we built up to, a full 80, 85 yard long toss. And now we're ready to, the arms are fully prepared, ready to go. And then we get them in, like I said, a couple guys with either myself or the pitching coach, and we throw into a 9 pocket and just work some mechanic stuff. I've got a great pitching coach, Andy Beaudry, pitched at Army. He coaches. He's a pitching coach on the Lumberman Legion team here, and he's got 6 or 7 basic mechanical exercises, drills that the old guys know, and so like tonight at our open gym, the guys are done hitting at 3:30, and the pitchers show up and they get their drill work in. And so, the foundation is kind of set based upon what we taught the last spring. And then just the older guys just knowing what to do and leading the young guys.
Yeah, Coach, what are some of those things that you have a point of emphasis? You guys are able to get some early workout preseason kind of stuff, and also kind of spin off a secondary question with that. Yeah. First question is, what are those things that you do regarding, we're in the Pacific Northwest, elements are a huge factor. Yep. It's almost like day one of the spring season. It's like winter's still out there, you're right. In Ellensburg and it's got a foot of snow on the ground. Down here in the Tri-Cities, we're probably dealing with some high winds and sleet and rain. And you guys are probably in that same boat as like Ellensburg. But what are some of those things that you guys are, dealing with, and how do you battle all that? I mean, you think about, dealing with it, you never know, right? Every day is a different day.
Right.
And so that by day one, it's not like you can bump, game game 1 of the season back just because you weren't able to get on the field. So
yeah. So with regard to pitching, through that first, essentially through spring break, I don't let guys go beyond 40, 45 pitches, 35 pitches if it's been stressful for them. So we really try to take care of the arms early on. Does a lot of benefit for the kids, especially those two-way guys that are, and maybe some of the multi-sport athletes that haven't been out throwing. So that's part of the arm care business that we get into. And in Idaho, there's, I think the pitch count before the end of March is like 88 total pitches and then bumps up to 110. So they try to kind of set the regulations that way with the arm stuff. We're fortunate here in Coeur d'Alene. Obviously it snows a lot. We have winters where the snow never leaves. We were supposed to start March, 13th or something like that. Last year, we had about 1.5 feet of snow on the ground with, and it's like 5 degrees, 10 degrees, no chance we're going to play. Right. So, but we're fortunate here at Coeur d'Alene High School to have a field house, a large field house. It's about 80 by 100. And it's completely encased and it's got heating on the inside. We share that with the football team, with the track team. So I get a couple days a week in there. And the kids appreciate that. You can hit, baseballs off machines and pump up the velo a little bit. And obviously kids are feeling good because it's warm. We just completed another field house down by our baseball field. It's always been outdoor batting cages, which really haven't been very useful to us. Honestly, by the time you get to the spring season, it's over and done with in about 8 weeks. And so you might be out there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks of good weather. But we just we had a really generous donor, an alumni, who pitched in, and we've been working on this project, raising money for about 2 years now. We just finished completion of this field house. Wonderful. I mean, it's so the boys are out there 3 days a week. So they get 5 days inside, at least it's covered, right? The outdoor field house, the gable ends are open. So it's cold, but it's not wet. And it's funny. I was worried about that, but the kids love it because it's, by the time they're up and working, they're warm and they're feeling pretty comfortable. And out there, in the cold weather, we're hitting foam balls out of the machine and they're soft tossing and they got their little routine that they do. And then we're also fortunate, our booster club is fantastic here at Coeur d'Alene High School. And we just completed the first turf football field, which is adjacent to the baseball field. Just completed that this fall. And so, in the past, when we go out to long toss, you come in caked in mud and you're worried about leaving, tracks all over the place out on the football field. And now the boys just go out there and it's like heaven. It's just, I don't think they realize or have realized yet about how great the facilities are here at Coeur d'Alene High School. So, weather-wise, we work around it. Obviously, those early season games, I can wear, gloves and I don't have much on top of my head. So the beanie comes in real handy, but what the boys play through it. It's just what it is up here. And I think, they don't know any different really, except for those kids that move up from California. They really don't know any different. And, we just do the best we can. Our game schedule is interesting. We play double headers in our league is called the Inland Empire League. So we play 2 sets of double headers a week, which makes for long days, but it also gives us more time. If we have to rain out a game, then we can bump it back. Maybe we have 2 or 3 open dates that week that we can fill in that time. The weather's bad until April, right? The end of April. And then you get a couple of really nice weeks, but it's all part of playing baseball up here. Spring sports.
It makes us tougher. All the people from the Northwest are just tougher.
100%.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot I want to go with there in different directions, but when you were talking earlier about your, when you have two-way guys, right?
Yeah.
And we have guys pitching in those snow months, and we're just praying that the Tri-Cities doesn't have snow so we can go to Jason's field but talk us through how you manage those guys, their workload throughout practice. Like for us, I've always treated our infielders as pitchers only, or pitchers first, right? I was just always curious to see how other people do that and making sure we manage loads on arms so that come May they're not hanging.
Exactly. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. We really haven't, outside of the occasional kid that, is physically not built, but he buys into the heavy balls and, and doesn't do it right. And those arm issues that arise, we do a pretty good job of just making sure of just communicating with kids. And we tell them, it's the Jagger program. We tell them, you got to listen to your arm and you got to communicate with us. And if it's hanging, you got to let us know. And then you still, if you're an infielder, you still go through your footwork, but you just don't make the throw across the diamond. And, you can still get a lot of work in, but we got to take it, we got to take it down a level. And we certainly don't make kids, kids throw just ad nauseum. Some of those pitcher, position players, they're probably not shortstops. And they're probably not center fielders or right fielders. They're probably guys that have a little bit easier of a throw to make. We do have a rule and I think it's a nationwide rule, the pitcher or the player DH rule. I'm not sure if that's something that you guys have in Washington. Does it? So my starting pitcher, he can be my starting pitcher and he's typically an outfielder, but I can keep his bat in the lineup and then put in a defensive player, gives another kid into the game. And I think that's a fabulous rule, in terms of just making sure that, a kid doesn't go 110 pitches, cools off 2 innings, and then just uncorks from right field, and puts a kid in danger. So, we try to do as much as we can where we're just communicating and most of the boys are pretty good about it. And some boys aren't. And those are just the kids that you just have to, you ask, you just kind of know the personalities, you get to know the personalities and those are the kids that you just have to be on and just making sure that all's good.
Talk a little about your practice design when you talk about kind of split days, say it's the worst weather, you got your foot and a half of snow.
Yeah.
How are you managing that space with your, different position groups to get through? Obviously you got pitcher time, infield, outfielder, catcher,
right,
hit time, team D time. How do you kind of manage your time during those windows where you have to use your indoor space?
Yeah. So prior to this year, now that we have the new hitting facility essentially, and really we could do a lot of defensive work and pitching in there as well. Prior to this year, basically from the end of the school day till about 9-10 o'clock at night, there's softball players and there's baseball players, teams rotating in and out of the field house and or the gym. Sometimes those freshmen on the freshman team, they, you don't want. Those aren't kids you want in at 9 o'clock and finishing practice at 10 o'clock because they got to sleep and they're growing. And so they're in the gym and they're using softball, the soft little baseballs. We just try to find a way. And, obviously you're pretty limited on what you can do. But, on those days when you do have the chance to get outside, it doesn't matter if it's cold, you get outside. If it's wet, if it's not just coming down, you get outside and you get those kids as much as you can, out on in this case now we'll have a football field that we can, take in and out on essentially. And, so that's really going to help us out.
I've always felt that even if we can go outside for 45 minutes, that's still better than being in the gym for 2 hours.
100%. And then when you get stuck for, 2 weeks at a time, do work in gyms and that gets real draining after a while. There's something about it gets draining on everybody, right? But there's something about you can do, you can throw live ABs inside your field house and that's great. But there's something about the big expanse of a big baseball field. It changes the vision. It changes, how quickly that ball jumps on you, how you see the ball. So that's, obviously, you do what you can, but we try to get outside as much as possible. The kids know I'm a little crazy, so I can wear a thick coat, and my coaching coaches can wear a thick coat, and the boys just have to, suck it up and run and keep running so they stay warm enough.
I'm just saying, Franklin makes a pair of gloves that looks like snow gloves, and they look like baseball gloves at the same time.
I know.
Game changer.
Terrific. Yeah. My assistant coach bought those. I've got the old electronic heated gloves action going on. Yeah. It's
beautiful.
Yeah. When you're not running around, it's a little bit chilly.
We'd love to hear your I think we all played, or you guys are over there now, but got to play in Spokane and Ellensburg with the snow. What secrets do you have for those out here for expedited snow melting? Any things that have worked for you in the past or haven't worked for you in the past? Give us your best.
Okay. Number one, let it sit and let it go on its own. That's what I've learned. If you try to speed it up, if you do anything to speed it up, it's going to snow 6 inches the next day. Last year we were trying to get our first game in. We were supposed to host Sandpoint. We had great weather towards the end, and the field was clear. And then we got dumped about a foot, and then it got super cold. But it was supposed to heat up, and we'd have about 3 days to dry out, right? So I had the boys out there. We just spent a whole Saturday, and they had their sleds, and they just filled up their sleds with snow, and they had their snow shovels. We cleared the infield, right? We get to Friday night, 8 inches of snow. No game.
No.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So there, I don't think there is a secret. I think that's kind of what I've learned. I've got to be patient and just let the water go. And that's the other thing. The field will be dry, the snow will be gone, but it's just saturated with water. And so, you know, you're thinking it's looking good, and then you go out there and you sink in mud. And and for, you know, you guys all understand this as coaches, you know, taking care of your field is a full year job. And, you know, I made a mistake my first year, second year of going out there a little early, and you just dig it up, and then you spend time trying to get that infield back the way you want it. So I just have to remind myself, I keep a little notebook, just be patient, wait for the snow to melt, wait for the clear up, and then you'll play. So, but no, we like this, we always try to get over to Central Washington or Yakima or even Spokane. You know, you're 30 miles away, and the field conditions are incredibly different. So, you know, it'd be nice to have a turf field, but that's just not the case. You know, we have a different way of raising money over here for schools than Washington and Oregon. So there is no money for that.
I will echo what you said. And if there's a young coach listening, please listen, because you're going to end up with either gator tracks on all over your grass. You're destroying the dirt.
Yes.
Let it do what Mother Nature's intended, because
exactly.
You have to watch it all spring, your mistakes you made in February.
I know. Exactly.
My worst was a tarped before a snowstorm on our infield. And it melted really quick, but then it froze really quick. And so instead of trying to get snow off of a tarp, you were now trying to chisel ice off of a tarp, which was a whole set of things. So then you're worried about what's underneath it. It's going to mold, it's going to rot, all that stuff. So I think sitting, we don't have the crazy climates like you guys do. We get the rains, but we don't have the snow. So but fortunate there. Lessons learned. Lessons learned. Be patient. Use your space. Take advantage of it as best you can, and don't worry about too much.
And we don't schedule a lot of games before spring break. Typically, we get back in April after spring break, and it's it's playable, and then we're right into our league play. And if we do schedule games, we try to, like I said, we go somewhere east or south of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So we get those games in. Road Warriors, right?
There you go.
Eastern. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've dabbled on some practice stuff and whatnot. We'd love to hop into some kind of offensive philosophy for you and your program, and obviously talk about some of the hit work you're able to do early on in the season, but maybe talk about how you instill your offensive strategy, philosophy, making sure guys during practice, open gym times, are doing the things that you want. And maybe when you get hands on them, how do you kind of structure your, whether drill work or practice design stuff there to allow them to kind of practice how you envision your offense working in a game situation?
Sure. Yeah. Offensively, and Erik sent me this question, and it's true. It depends on who you have that year, right? The last couple of years we've been pretty small, not very big, and so we play the short game a lot. So we spend a lot of time bunting, and we spend a lot of time, bunting for base hits, and put that threat out there. We run. 21, we had 110 stolen bases that year. 22, we had 91 stolen bases. Last year, 88 stolen bases. We like to run whenever the game allows it. We like to take chances there, getting runners in scoring positions in certain situations. We like to take advantage of pitchers that aren't holding runners. Like to take advantage of catchers that maybe aren't paying attention, or middle infielders that aren't paying attention, and so we take some chances, probably some chances that you wouldn't normally take, but we try to put a lot of pressure on the defense, put a lot of pressure on a pitcher so that the pitcher's not comfortable just sitting there and just firing strikes. Pitcher's got to think about, and the opposing coach, whoever's calling the pitches, has to think about, you got a runner on first base, and pretty much every one of our guys is a threat to run. Even the big slow guys, we like to lay steal, and we certainly like to try to push it and take an extra base. It's just crazy. High school baseball, I mean, playing catch is so important, right? And if you have a team that doesn't play catch and you're playing against them, you're willing to take a lot of chances, score a lot of runs, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So our offensive philosophy, pretty much year to year is we're gonna do whatever we can. Some years we got a couple big bats in there, and so you take the odds in your favor with the guy getting hits. Some years, we got guys that just put the ball in play. And putting the ball in play and running, and it's amazing how many runs you can score and how quickly little things can turn into big innings for you offensively. When we get these guys in the spring, base running is always a part of our practice. Typically it's we've got a group that's running right after warm-ups, or maybe that is their warm-up that day, and we're focusing in on maybe one or two things. Early on it's working leads and kind of setting the expectations for leads. Eventually we get into different types of steals and stealing situations, and then eventually it's running in certain situations where you got a runner first and third, and ball heading to the gap. What are we looking to do? So that's once we get them out there, I've got a great assistant coach, Mike Borowski, coach down in Santa Margarita. Jay Serra down in California he's come up and he just does a great job of just teaching these kids that I think it's kind of a forgotten part of the game. Maybe not so much at the high school level, but it's certainly not as emphasized at higher levels. And it's just what it is. We just have to let our kids be athletes and teach them some ways to increase their odds and put some pressure on the defense.
That's got me all fired up, because people look at me weird when our first drill of the season might be how we take our leads and how we steal bases and our mentality. And I finally tell our kids, this will make the difference in some games, fellas. This is very important. And it's also a great way to warm up before you play catch, but preaching that to those guys and creating that mentality. What's the mentality you preach to your guys? Because base running is a mentality.
That's it. And so at the younger levels, I want them running all the time. I want them to get on first base and think I'm already on second base, and they're going to get thrown out occasionally. At the C team level or the freshman level, they're not going to get thrown out. The ball is going to get thrown in the outfield, but I want that aggressive mindset taught early and often. So, our C team and our freshman coach, and our JV coaches, they do a great job with emphasizing, look, we're going to take some chances on the bases just because we want you to gain confidence in your ability to run and run the right way in the right situation. Because at the varsity level, at some point, you're going to need that. And you don't want to put a kid in a situation where they haven't been prepared. They haven't experienced that moment, because they're going to freeze, and your chances of being successful are pretty limited. So it's program wide. We start them as youngsters, and it's amazing that, it's really just not taught at the youth levels. I think, the Little League program up here is a wonderful program, but there's no leadoffs and there's very little stealing, and then it depends on who they play with after Little League, whether or not that's an emphasis. I think a lot of times we spend a lot of time on hitting, and we spend a lot of time on field work, infield, outfield work, and we just don't spend a lot of time base running. So our kids come in and right away, the old kids kind of know what to do, and we stick the old kids with the young kids, and we just emphasize just be aggressive. And it bites you in the rear end sometimes, but at the end of the day, I think you win more games that way.
Rather be aggressive than get caught with your pants down.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and ultimately, the whole idea of to win the game is got to score runs.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we kind of take that away with, you know, we see some of this with travel ball. You know, you hit the ball long enough, yeah, you should win games. Well, you know, it's the little things that add up to make
Right.
the difference. And so,
Yeah.
solid.